I was president of the Republic of Africa, were some of the most passionate speakers for self-determination that I had ever met at the age of 17. While I had met Elvis Cleveland, I had met Bobby Seals, and I had met David Huey, and was impressed. There was something absent in my mind from the strategy. I supported wholeheartedly the 10-point program. I supported wholeheartedly the right to self-defense. I supported wholeheartedly internationalizing our struggle. I supported wholeheartedly community control. I think that that's what the Ocean Hill-Brownsville struggle was about, our struggle for school boards and that. I thought that that was very important stuff. But I thought that it did not have an end. So when the Republic of Africa presented itself, and I went to Detroit to meet with Brother Herman and Brother Arthur Harris, who's been in exile almost for 20, 30 years. And Sister Nelda, we became very much impressed with the Republic of Africa's position of 5 southern states. And so I became a member, a citizen. I renounced my American citizens at about 16 or 17, and I became a citizen of the Republic of Africa. Prior to becoming a citizen of the Republic of Africa, I had participated in the Freedom and Peace Party with Brother Herman Ferguson. There was the Peace and Freedom, and then there was the Freedom and Peace. Well, while Elvis Cleveland and Angela Davis ran on the Peace and Freedom, Herman Ferguson and others ran on the Freedom and Peace. And I was part of his campaign. Matter of fact, there was only 2 or 3 of us a part of his campaign coordination committee. And we went all over the United States, all the way in New York State to get the ballots.
Was this in 1968?
1968. And we experienced a very, very important thing. We were able to talk to people of all races and colors and explain to them why Herman Ferguson was running for black people to separate from New York State. And so from both sides of the coin, we were able to see why people supported the position to separate from the United States. From New York State at that time. While white people supported our right to separate, and while black people supported our need to separate. And so, on the tail end of the Ocean Hill-Brownsville struggle, while we were involved in exposing what power really meant in controlling the school board, here we have an electoral campaign which was about the separation of powers of the people, giving each people their quantity or quality of power, and self-government and self-control of their lives. And through electoral politics, that referendum became a very important thing. And so we ran. We were able to put Herman Ferguson on the ballot. We were able to solicit support from all over the state.
This is for president. Or what? For Senate. Okay.
He was running for Senate.
Oh, right. New York State.
Yeah. And we had other people on the ballot, other interesting, very creative and colorful people. But Herman at the time had been indicted and was waiting on appeal. And so there was the Ram cases, the Statue of Liberty cases. These were all things when I was 17, 18 years old. And at the same time, there was the Black Panther Party. So while we paralleled each other, one was community and one was dealing with an overall issue. And so what we had is a impasse for a while in terms of which way we were going to go in terms of separation or community control. And whether or not separation meant division from a people or power, separation of power. So at an early age, I was able to understand the distinction between racism and self-government and self-reliance. And in 1968, Herman ran for senator. Herman Ferguson ran for senator. And he was able to campaign all over the state. And it was a very, very, very exciting time for me. Because the option of electoral politics was put squarely before me as a young man. And while listening to, at the time, this is right after Martin Luther King had died, but many other people talking about that Percy Sutton was a part of the Democratic Club. I knew all of them. Gibson, Mayor Gibson, they all had us under their tutelage in electoral politics. They were all very impressed with Herman Ferguson's ability to get on the ballot, and were very impressed with our campaign. And I think that at the time that he became clearly on the ballot, the black political strategy had to shift, and he had to get his voice in all of the forums that was happening at the time. And so I think that the Black Panther Party in New York City, in New York State, in fact, came out clearly in support of Herman Ferguson, which was in somewhat contradiction to the support for Elbridge Cleaver and not particularly Elbridge Cleaver and Angela Davis, but they had a person that they were running for Senator too on the Peace and Freedom Party. So those discussions happened. So we all understood that electoral politics was not in and of itself. And so that love and that unity just bonded what we considered the Republican New Africa and the Black Panther Party within New York, and it had always stayed the same. And so in 1968, after Herman Ferguson lost the election, obviously lost the election, but our success was tremendous. We proposed to separate Ocean Hill-Brownsville from New York State. Matter of fact, from America. Because the people in Ocean Hill-Brownsville was fed up with what had happened with the school board system. So at that point, the Republic of New Africa solicited the support of other organizations, the East, the African Teachers Association, a number of groups. And we ran a ballot, a referendum, and they had to elect representatives from each block associations to be elected to come to Detroit to hear the proposal of the Republic of New Africa. And so in that election, we were able to get as much participation as a congressional election in that area, in Ocean Hill-Brownsville at that time. And 10 people were elected by their ballots, and they had to be put on the ballot. They ran, the whole process. So they were elected, and they were sent to Detroit as representatives of Ocean Hill-Brownsville to determine whether or not the option of voting through the process already established in the so-called American Constitution is to secede from New York State. Now, you have to remember, back then, I think Floyd McKissick had a little separate enclave. There was Oscar Brown Sr. had a little enclave. There were different thoughts about that issue. It was a real issue. So we went to Detroit in '69. And in '69 was at the New Bethel Church, Aretha Franklin Flowers Church. These 10 representatives, we were finishing our conference on the issue. And at this conference and at this church, at the age of 18, I became very clear that the question of separating from America, separating black people from America by controlling its resources was one of the most dangerous things that you could do. Because in that church, with men, women, and children of all ages, the United States government sent up to 300 police and shot that church up and tried to kill everybody in that church. And I happened to be on security at the time. And that, the defense of that church, the defense of those people by members of the Republic of Africa, the Black Legion, was some of the most heroic show of love for a people that I have ever seen at that time. And it was one of the things that crystallized in me that we could not have a movement, a serious movement, if we were not prepared to defend ourselves against attack. And I think that the attack on New Bethel was not just an attack against the Republic of New Africa. It was an attack against Ocean Hill-Brownsville for electing these people and sending them to Detroit to even investigate the possibility of succeeding from New York State. And that we know now today, after the trial and all of them, that this was one of the highest strategic COINTEL programs of that period. And so, when we look at what happened in New Bethel, and we understand what happened in New Bethel, then we have a better understanding of what happened in Move. You see? And then when we realize that President at our